more people are working from home. So do companies need as much office space? Will more office space become available that we can then convert into these kind of care facilities?
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Designer Future podcast. I've got a bit of a different guest on today. Jackie, please go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
Hi, I'm Jackie Collier and I'm a director of Airworth Property. So we have a property portfolio in West Yorkshire. There's several strings to our bow, if you like. We buy for ourselves. So we've been building our own property portfolio, mainly buy to lets, because one of our big driving forces is to be able to give people better homes. And there are a lot of poor quality rental accommodation out there in the world, with landlords who historically have been more interested in the money than their tenants' welfare. There are a lot of good landlords as well, so us included. So building our property portfolio has been a big part of what we do. We also find property for other people. So we have clients who perhaps live down south or abroad who want to invest in property, don't know where to start. If they live down south, then usually the house prices around the southeast, London, or even the southwest are fairly prohibitive compared to the house prices around us, where you can pick properties up for anything between 50 and 80k. So I know if you're in London, that probably buys you a door and a garage, but up here you can get a whole house for that. So we do a lot of the buy, refurb, refinance and rent. That's our main objective, our main strategy. So we look to buy houses that need work. We then do all the refurbishment. We then refinance to get most of the money back out, because in the current market, it's almost impossible to get all your money back out unless you are very, very lucky and land on that unicorn deal. It's a virtual impossibility to get all your money back out. But then we rent to either private tenants or DSS, or we also work with social housing and charities, and they put their tenants in, which is a great strategy because you're helping people, but you're also getting a 5-year lease. They do all the maintenance, they do all the refurbishment if the tenant does anything wrong, and they manage it all. So it's a very cost-effective way of renting your property out, whilst also giving something back. So, you know, we're working with homeless charities, we're working with domestic abuse. It means that those people are getting themselves in a much safer, more comfortable environment where potentially they can start, or hopefully they can start living their lives again and getting themselves back together. The charity we work with try and help integrate those people back into the community. They want to give them the opportunity to work with other people, to get jobs, to become self-sufficient again. So that is a really big driver for us as well. Like I say, because we have those connections, if people want us to find properties for them, then we can also offer that as an added extra. So some people want to get involved in property in a very hands-on way, where they buy the property, they want to manage the refurb, and they want to deal with getting the tenants in and either managing them or handing them over to a letting agent. Other people want the benefit of property investment, but don't necessarily want the aggravation. So we can help on both counts. We can find them properties that are already tenanted, they're already done up, and it's a case of just buy it and they get a yield on it. Or we can buy the properties, manage the refurb for them, get a letting agent to manage it for them, get the tenants in, or hand it over to a charity. So really, they just get the monthly income. The other way that we work with people who want passive income is they can invest in our projects. So they don't have to own the property, but they can do private loans, private mortgages into our projects, and we will give them a return on that money. And when you're looking at potentially negative interest rates coming through the banks at the moment, you're having to pay to save. Who wants that? It's crazy.
I know, it's
yeah, absolutely mad. I mean, even at 0.1% or 1% in ISAs, when you figure in inflation, people are losing money by saving.
Mm-hmm.
If they work with us, depending on the sort of project, if it's a private project, then we'll tend to give between 5 and 8% interest per annum. If it's a social housing project, then they can choose what interest rate they want in return, up to 5%. But obviously, the lower interest rate they take, the more opportunity there is for us to do more projects to give more people safe, comfortable homes. So it depends on their balance of how much money they need and want in return versus their social conscience and how much they want to help people. And either's fine, and we are happy to talk with anybody and everybody about those kind of options that are available to them. Because for us, there's last year there were 330,000 homeless people in the UK. 130,000 children spent Christmas in temporary accommodation. Those are frightening figures.
Crazy.
And now that we're post-COVID, that's just getting worse and going to get worse, because people have been locked into spending more time with their partners.
Mm.
You used to be able to go out to work, go out to the pub, kind of live separate lives if you weren't getting on so well. Whereas now, people have been in lockdown and they've been with a partner maybe 3 months solid, suddenly realise that actually they don't like them much anymore. The divorce rate has gone up. So that in itself can cause homelessness.
Mm.
It's also caused much higher rates of domestic abuse. And people have got in financial difficulty because if they've not had the opportunity to have furlough, if they've lost money, they've lost their job, furlough's coming to an end, then they can be in very difficult circumstances. We don't want people to be in those circumstances if it's avoidable. So one way of helping people who do find themselves in difficulty is working with those private investors to help find them properties and get them started again. The other way is if people find themselves in that financial difficulty, or they're getting divorced and they have bought the house probably 2006, 2007, when house prices were at peak. You could get 100% mortgage, you could get 125% mortgage. They may well be in negative equity. If you're adding a financial difficulty to that, they may be in arrears and they can't sell the house, because even though the market's quite buoyant at the moment, compared to 2006, 2007, and they were taking those kind of mortgages,
Mm-hmm.
they're not necessarily going to cover the outstanding balance on their mortgage with what they can sell for their house now, and particularly if they want to sell it quickly. Because even if they get an offer, lenders aren't necessarily going to give the mortgage that they need, or they'll downvalue because nobody knows what's going to happen in the future.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people are finding themselves feeling like they've got nowhere to turn,
Mm-hmm.
because they can't sell the house, they can't afford what they've got, they need to get out, and they don't know which way to go. And that is another instance that we can help people with, because we effectively will take over management of their property and with an option to buy it in the future. And that value in the future will clear whatever the outstanding mortgage is.
Sure.
So for them, it's as good as sold. They no longer have the stress of thinking, where is the mortgage payment coming from? How am I going to get out of it being arrears? Am I going to be repossessed? How do I live with this person I now hate? We can help them move on with that circumstance. And what we encourage people to do is not bury their head in the sand and hope it all goes away, but shout And, you know, we do it, there's people like us that do it. Just please, just get in touch if you know anybody in those circumstances.
Amazing. I think that's definitely something that doesn't get talked about, especially with what's gone on over the last couple of months. I think that's very, very interesting. Just to get into the actual investing side of things and how you sort of got started, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you've done beforehand and sort of that initial process of getting your first real estate investment.
So 2017, I was a florist. I had my own florist. We were big into florists, big executors. My husband worked for Lloyd's Banking Group, and the project that he was on, he was in IT, he was a senior IT manager. The project he was working on was coming to an end, and he had the option of applying for another job within the bank or taking voluntary redundancy. And we're getting on, we're getting a bit old. So it was like, do you want to apply for another job or get paid to leave? And we'd always liked property. We'd done a property maybe 12, 13 years before where we'd bought a house, done it up and sold it. And that was what we were thinking we would do again. We could take that money from his redundancy. We could look at doing another house up, selling it, taking some profit, hopefully, and keep rolling that. We then realised that if you do that, you're probably only going to do 2 projects in a year, and you don't have really any cash flow because all your money's tied up in doing that house up, and then you're banking on somebody hopefully coming along and buying it because you've got it right. Sure. At the same time, we saw an advert for doing some property training. It was literally a 2-hour free property training session that popped up on Instagram, I think. So I said to Steve, you go, see what it's all about. And he came back buzzing, absolutely buzzing. He's like, oh my God, it's amazing what we can do. It's absolutely fantastic. I spent £1,000 on doing a training course for 3 days, but I got a free tablet. Wow, great. So we went along, we did this 3-day training course, and it was mind-blowing. It was absolutely, I can't even put into words how mind-blowing it was. And a lot of people slate property training and how much it costs and what the investment is. And I think things have changed a bit since we did that. There are companies out there who perhaps aren't quite as honourable in what they're offering and promising.
Yeah.
But there are some very good companies.
I think as well at the moment, you know, there's with social media and stuff, everything's just so accessible, and there's no barrier to entry really. So yeah, definitely if you find someone that's a reliable source. And just for the people watching and listening, like I'm guessing that Jackie and her other half have done some like thorough research behind the person that's putting on this training as well. So don't just find something and jump straight in, like do your due diligence with the person or the company or training provider. Sorry, crack on.
Totally. No, absolutely, because there are some out there that pertain to be big training companies that aren't necessarily giving what they promise. We were very lucky, but the training company we went with were excellent. They were very, very good. The quality of the training they provided was unbelievable. And you can do stuff online. You can look at stuff on YouTube and everything. But I don't believe it gives you the same value of training because you don't have the support and you can't ask the questions and you can easily misunderstand. I mean, we have learned so many strategies with what we've done, which allow us to do what we've done now, like helping people, etc. But I mean, we were very full on because Steve had left his job and it was like, we need to make this happen.
Sure.
And we got that support from the training company and we got the training in how to do that. And what it meant was instead of buying 2 properties in the first year and not really having any cash flow, we bought 10 properties in the first year. So it just allowed us to leverage things differently that meant we could actually make things happen. I mean, 2018, we bought our first property, January 18. I think it was the end of January, about the 27th of January. We bought our next property middle of February, and we bought our next property on the 5th of March. And that was a bit like, oh my God.
0 to 100.
I don't recommend it because it's just like everything in one go. Buy one and make it happen.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is knowing how to do your numbers, knowing what the demand is, having more than one exit strategy in case things change, in case things go wrong. And even knowing all of that, it's still not going to be perfect. But if you wait for perfect, you will never buy anything, ever. Perfect doesn't exist. You have to take a leap of faith. And I mean, our first project, we estimated the refurb at being 8 grand. Actually, the refurb was 16 grand. But it still worked. It still worked. It was fine. The plan was we would refinance in 6 months. So after 6 months, we went along to the lender and we said, right, can we have our further advance now? We've owned it 6 months. We've done all this work. It's worth a lot more. Oh, no, you've got to have it tenanted 6 months. That wasn't what you said, but okay. After we then went back, having had it tenanted 6 months, they went, oh, no, you can't do it now because now you own more than 4 properties. So now you're portfolio landlords. So now you've got to wait 2 years. We still haven't refinanced that property 3 years on, 3.5 years on. But because we haven't refinanced, we don't have a higher mortgage, therefore we get better cash flow on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
it's a balance.
So, and with that as well, because, you know, I suppose there is so many different factors and so many, not loopholes, but, you know, there's always things that can come out of nowhere unexpectedly. Knowing everything you know now, what would you sort of suggest if someone was looking to just, you know, dip their foot in the water and sort of get invested into something within real estate, whether it is like HMO or, you know, buy to let, something along those lines, just getting started? What would your advice be, sort of knowing what you know now after those couple of years?
I would always say start with a buy to let, because with HMOs, you've got so much legislation, so many rules and regulations. And actually the HMO market in a lot of cases has been hit so much harder. Buy to let is bread and butter. Training companies sell HMOs as a golden goose with massive cash flow, and you're going to be rich in no time at all. It may happen, but very equally, it may not. If you've got voids in an HMO, usually that's your profit that's disappearing. So
there's a lot of spinning wheels as well on a HMO, right? There's a lot that could sort of go wrong.
So much. You've got to make sure your tenants get on together. You've got to do your figures very carefully. There's so many rules and regulations you've got to abide by, because if you don't, you won't get your HMO license. People forget how much an HMO license can cost. Really, really, more than anything, would say start with a buy to let, because if you make a mistake on a buy to let, if you've done your figures right, you won't lose money. You won't make as much as you planned, but that difference is relatively small. If you scale that up into doing HMOs or commercial projects, if you make a 10% error, a 10% error on a £100,000 buy to let, okay, it's 10 grand. It's a lot of money, but it's not necessarily earth shattering. If you make a 10% error on £500,000 project, 50 grand is a lot more impact. So learn what you're doing small and build up, definitely. And if you can afford it, wherever possible, work with somebody who can mentor you, coach you, or go on training courses, but have that interaction, because it's not just the learning, the teaching, it's also about that having that connection with other people doing what you're doing. We've made so many friends through the training courses that we've done, and you can just bounce ideas off them or ask them how they're finding the market. And you know, you learn from others. Everybody, the corporate world, people are kind of treading on everybody else to get ahead. The property world, everybody is helping everybody. It's so different. You know, when we started, we were like, what do you mean you're happy to share?
I think that's so important to say as well, though, is like finding the people around you, people that are doing what you're doing, or even trying to do what you're doing, even that accountability in a sense of having people around you that have similar goals and are doing similar things to you, definitely plays a big factor in whatever you're doing. The next thing I'd really like to get onto is, obviously we run a social media company and we help, real estate agents and property investors with their social media. And obviously you've talked about going on courses and stuff like that. So I'm guessing you're utilizing social media in some way. Just talk to me a little bit about how you're utilizing social media at the moment, whether it's, reaching out to investors, real estate agents, stuff like that.
So when I started, I had Facebook for my florist, and I had followers on Facebook, friends on Facebook through the florist, which I then changed to kind of my property company page, and they sort of stayed with me. But I hadn't appreciated the power of social media when I first started, or the power of branding. Now, that is so important. It is so vital to move forward because, one, it's free advertising, which is always a benefit, but making those connections with people. So the main platforms we use are Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So I try and put a post out on Instagram every day at least. And I try and vary what those posts are, but I try and give some value. I try and give tips. I talk about projects that we're doing, mistakes we've made, things we found that work well, and try and help people through the information I put out. And what I put out on Instagram also goes to Facebook. So on Instagram, I have my page, which is Jackie Collier Property, because everybody was saying having your personal name involved is much better branding than just your company.
Yeah.
So on Facebook, I then have my page, which was the florist page because it's always been me anyway. And then we have a page for our trading company, which is there with property. We have a page for our sourcing company, which is there with sourcing. But then we also have pages targeting vendors. So we buy houses in Keighley, we buy houses in Bradford, we buy houses, etc. Because we're trying to get people to work directly with us as well as working with the estate agents. And if we can't help them, we pass them on to our estate agents that we work with. So it's very much just getting hold of people, but also to try and talk to investors about what we do and show them the projects we're doing, what our goals are, what our vision is, our mission, and connect with the people who have got the same mindset, the same goals, the same ethics that we've got. Because you have to work with people who are on the same page as you. So, like I say, we put all those posts out. I've started doing lives on them, which was a bit of a, okay, I'm kind of getting more used to that now. But that was because the people like yourself who are working in social media understand the value of that. And because they're sharing those tools with us, it's like, okay, it is so vital to connect with people. And whilst you can connect with the picture, you get a better connection if it's a picture of a person like you, but you get a better connection still if it's a video and they can see you talking or they can see you walking around your project, because people engage.
For sure.
So to start with, we're just looking to engage with people that we can start talking to. And if they want help with getting started on their property journey, if they're looking for somebody to be a coach, if they're looking to invest and get those kind of returns we talked about, then that doesn't happen overnight. You have to engage with people and build that relationship, because people have to understand the people they're dealing with. It's all about know, like, trust. You can't just pick somebody off a screen and think, oh, well, I'll give them 50 grand, or I'll start working with them without knowing that they're honourable and ethical and aren't a scam artist, because there are unfortunately too many of them out there. So you have to build that trust, build that relationship, and just start that to work with people. So social media for us is the main thing. It's the main way that we get our message out. We spend much more time on it now than we used to because we understand the importance of it. And we're actually looking at building our social media presence even more. We have sort of started setting up a YouTube channel, which is another next step.
I was going to say that to you because we work with quite a few agents in the US, and what I've sort of seen from working with these people is there's a lot of people in the US that are sort of YouTube heavy, and like they're using YouTube as sort of their top of the funnel, if you like. And some of the stories that I've heard, excuse me, some of the stories I've heard from like Facebook groups and stuff like that with these realtors in the US is like they're getting leads come to them from their YouTube videos. And exactly what Jackie was just saying about like, no trust, you can imagine how much more someone's going to like, know and trust you if they've watched a 20-minute YouTube video of you, and then there's a call to action at the end of the video saying, if you want some advice, feel free to book in a call with us or something like that. So yeah, I would definitely suggest you getting on YouTube for sure.
Yeah, well, we sort of set the channel up. We actually called it Property Virgins. So feel free to look at it, but there's not much on there at the moment because it's all sort of the next new venture, if you like. But that is definitely somewhere where we want to be heading, because we enjoy working with people and we want other people to do well. The whole ethos of everything we've ever learned from day one of doing property training is it's a win-win. Mm-hmm. It's a win for you. You've got to make money, you've got to live, but it's a win for who you're working with, and whether that person is somebody who wants you to train them, whether it's somebody who wants to invest in you, whether it's somebody who wants you to source some projects, or whether it's somebody who wants you to buy their house. The end result is everybody has to win. There's none of this stepping on people and ripping people off to get to where you need to be, because if you help those people, you will win by association. You will just automatically get a better deal because those people are getting a better deal. And it builds your credibility, it builds your reputation, that they might say to somebody else, do you know, I worked with Jackie, we had a great experience, I would recommend you get in touch. And if we can't help, we will say so. We're not trying to say to anybody, we do everything, we can do everything, we can help everybody. But we will certainly talk to everybody and ask them the questions we need to ask to find out what help they need and how we can do that. And if we can't, there's a fair chance we will know somebody who can. Amazing. So at least we can point them in the right direction.
Amazing, cool. You mentioned briefly around that you're starting to go into different areas and building out, content and stuff for different platforms. What does it look like in comparison to a few years ago when you first got into like investing into property versus now? Have you sort of started to build out a team, or are you outsourcing certain things now? It's always great to jump into that.
Yeah. So when we started, it was very much, we did absolutely everything. I find it quite difficult because I'm a bit of a control freak. So letting things go for other people to do is relatively hard. But we understand the importance of that, because at the end of the day, you only have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. So you cannot do everything. And also, you have to build a power team around you, because we know certain things and we are expert in what we know, but I'm not an expert accountant, solicitor, surveyor, whatever. So you have to build that team that you can draw on, because different projects will need different skills from other people. So we now have solicitors we work with all the time. We have surveyors that we call on all the time. We have a build team that works pretty much all the time for us, or our daughter, because she has a property business as well. My daughter has a property staging business, so she stages any flips that we're doing. Solicitors, I said solicitors, tax people, accountants. It's building that team around you that you can call on. And some you need more often than others. You always need a solicitor to buy property. We don't always need the structural surveyor or a structural engineer. It depends on what property we're buying. So certainly building that team and using their skills and knowledge is vital. Time-wise, we've recently taken on a virtual assistant, so she can help us with some of the other stuff. We are looking at outsourcing more and more. In fact, we were only talking about yesterday, we kind of need to have a meeting about what else we can outsource to create more time for us within our business. And also to be more independent of each other within our business, to separate tasks and skills for our own expertise and knowledge, that we can be more efficient ourselves rather than necessarily doing things together. We did a lot together to start with, which I think was important for us both to learn as much about property as we could. But now it's better that we split what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you've got to pull other people in. Employing other people is quite scary. I employ people as a florist, and there are challenges involved with employment, largely employment law as opposed to the people and the things that you have to adhere to through legislation, which it's right that employees are protected, but it can be quite hard if you're a small business to actually deal with all the legislation around that. So having people like a virtual assistant or outsourcing is a very, very good way of managing that. So yeah, we're very much looking at doing that and building that side.
Amazing, wicked. Well, it's been amazing to get to know you a little bit better, and I've definitely dropped some amazing value for people. The show is called Designer Future, so I'd love to figure out where you're sort of looking to be within the next 12 months.
So we've done 3 years worth of training, but we never stop. You never know everything. You never learn everything. So we are continually working with different people to do more training and to learn more and make us the best that we can be. Our plan is that we work more with social housing and the charities to be able to give those homes that people need, that I spoke about at the beginning, and to work more with investors. The investors we work with are a variety of people who invest a smaller amount to people who invest a bigger amount, and it's great working with them all. But because of economies of scale, it's easier to work with less people who invest more and do it on a regular basis. So to work with those people and them to have that understanding of the social position and that social conscience to be able to help people is really important. We just signed up to something called Supported Living Gateway, which is bringing together property investors and social housing providers onto one platform where you can put forward what properties you've got and they put forward what they need, and it matches things up so much quicker. So the more we can get into that and actually develop into doing more, not new builds out of the ground, but conversions to give supported living what they need, because it's a lot more specialist depending on what the need is. It may be if it's disability, it's got to be ground floor and access is much easier, wider doors, etc. But to understand what they need, and then to be able to do more conversions of things like pubs, commercial buildings that provide that kind of accommodation. And you know, because of COVID, so much is changing in terms of what the business future is for everybody. More people are working from home, so do companies need as much office space? Will more office space become available that we can then convert into these kind of care facilities that help other people? So that's the way we're looking at things, and to develop into that. So that's what we're going to be working on for the next 12 months. So building the business, building our experience, and building what we can offer other people.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to leave Jackie's link to her Instagram in the description. So if you did want to go check her out, that's obviously where you can go find her. Jackie, thank you again for coming on. Thank you for watching and listening, the guys at home. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, what? Nah, 106.